Okay, precious metals update here on June 5th, and we'll actually start with the gold to silver ratio. And just reminder, this, generally if this is going lower, it's bullish. If it's going higher, it's bearish, meaning we want silver to be outperforming gold as a general rule. And so right now, I would say that what we're seeing is what looked like a breakdown that's actually starting to recover, which is not great for the sector. So let's actually zoom into, like, let's say like the 8-hour chart, right? So in a previous video, I had sort of labeled this as a possible bear flag, right? So like around like right here. And obviously a lot of price action has happened since then. It actually did spill over, but notice we recovered and then we spilled over again. So you could say this is a double bottom here, maybe, right? This is an 8-hour chart. And if you go into the daily, you know, I'll get rid of this so it's easier to see. Looks like this is your daily swing low, and then you came down, made another low, but this is your higher low now. So that doesn't look terribly bearish. And on the weekly chart, important, last week was green. After this, like, this was your potential weekly swing high, and notice what we really needed was a trade below 83.41, and we never got that. Actually, well, we did. We got that for the slightest little bit, the week before last, the week of May 23rd, and then it bounced, and last week was green. So we really want to watch for this. This is kind of your tell of bearishness for the sector in general. And so the monthly is still red, but it had an open at 85.31. So above 85.31, that goes green. So that's something to watch for. So now moving to the actual metal itself, let's go to gold. And so we did make a new high on Friday. That was day 14. We did close red though, so almost a bearish outside bar. So you would have expected us to come down and make a low below, let's say, 1843. I would be surprised if we didn't make that low on Monday. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't rebound. In fact, I would expect we probably do, right? We maybe get a breakdown below that level. It becomes a false breakdown. We've been seeing a lot of those lately, a lot of kind of chop whipsawing people. And if you look at the weekly chart, this is still looking like it's a potential weekly cycle low on week 22. That's the week of May 16th. But importantly, last week, this is where, understanding, understanding highs and lows is important. Because if you were just looking at where this candle opened or closed, it really didn't do anything, right? But notice we went all the way up here. We made a new high above this week's high. And then we were all the way down here, a low below this week's low. We closed red, but really not making much movement between the open and the close. That said, this is not a great setup. This is technically a bearish outside bar, right? We made a new high and we failed. Another way to think about that is it's a failed breakout, right? But important, it didn't just continue to melt through supports, right? It tried to do that and then it rebounded and came back here. So I'd say, this is neutral at best, not necessarily something to stake your money on necessarily, given there are lots of other opportunities, but not something that I would say this is sort of an imminent breakdown or breakout coming. And if we move to silver, and I'd say, like, just moving to the monthly chart really quickly, that is actually still green. So that's important to note. It does look like we're in a new daily cycle. I think it's really now a question of was that day 14 the top? That this almost looks too obvious, right? This bearish candle. I think probably a breakdown below that low for a quick move back up to just kind of get people on the wrong side of things. And if we look at silver, same thing here, except that was actually day 15. We made a new high. Again, this is still looking, this definitely has the look of a bear flag, right? and we're trying to kind of break up out of there. But you know, again, so similar picture with gold, could easily be the weekly cycle top. In the case of silver, this candle is a little bit more sort of bearish, kind of outright. So it's also a bearish outside bar, but notice we did close, further from where we opened than gold did. So gold's candle was more of a doji-ish thing. This thing has, a fuller body, if you will. So, more red, which in this case, where it's a question here of, was this week 15 a weekly cycle low? Ultimately, we're now pretty well below the high for that candle, which is technically at 2240, right? We're now down at the 2190 area. So this is going to be important to watch, to signal, was this actually not a weekly cycle low after all, or was it a weekly cycle low and we are in a new weekly cycle, but it's going to be a bearish weekly cycle? That's a really important nuance to understand, because that could actually be a far worse scenario than the idea that, because that would make this week 18. That would mean we're starting on week 19, which means, maybe we have another 6 or 7 weeks of decline. But if this is a new weekly cycle and it's bearish, then, we could easily have another 20 weeks of decline. So important kind of distinction. And just like gold, still green on the monthly as well. So important to watch. And then we'll look at GDX. So GDX notably was actually green on the week, but looking more like gold in the doji-like nature of the candle. But that does keep some hope alive. New high on the daily on day 14. Friday was actually just an inside day, though it was red. And so really clear levels to watch here. And lastly, we'll look at GDX to GDLD ratio. So basically miners to gold. And similar picture to GDX itself, right? So it did have a green weekly candle, actually bullish outside. Again, just like GDX. And it's the same picture. Potential swing low here. In this case, we still have some distance to actually make that swing low. And we're still quite a distance between the 10-week moving average. But that's the same thing for the miners and, silver, etc. Just kind of outright. This is similar to silver. I mean, definitely spending a lot of time grinding here. Like, the more time we spend grinding here, the more likely this is kind of a bear flag. Yet at the same time, you've got these like gaps here that, at some point you imagine, even if we approach resist, like even if we encounter resistance, we may still kind of make a run to that kind of area. But I'd say that this ratio chart isn't really telling you anything terribly different than what you're seeing from the miners or the metals themselves, the metal itself, just kind of outright.